Welcome to another episode of Soap Thing Thoughts. Joining me today is Peter Wolf of Wolf Whiskers. Welcome to the Soap Thing Project.
Hey, thank you, Benjamin. It's good to be here.
Thanks for coming on here. It's a pleasure. This is your first public appearance in a while. It's been a minute.
Yeah, it has been a while. Yeah.
So tell me, Peter, you've been making shave brushes, custom brushes, longer than anybody else that I'm aware of that's still doing it. How did you get into making shave brushes for a living?
Okay. It was actually this year will be 10 years coming in May. And there were a couple and still are a couple other artisans that came before me. Certainly not the longest, but I think Rudy Bay, he's been out there several years before I started. But what got me interested was I saw some. I started wet shaving. I wanted to save money. Same story everybody has. Save some money. Hey, 10 cents a blade was a lot more appealing than the expensive cartridge blades. So I looked into that, got onto Amazon, found a good starter kit for myself, and started wet shaving. And then you sort of get into the rabbit hole that everybody falls into when they become a hobbyist. And I started seeing some artisan made shaving brushes out there, and something more creative with a more modern flair than just the ivory and butterscotch and a few wooden ones that were painted that I saw, and some other ones that were out there. And I said, I think I might be able to do something like that. But it took me probably 4 months before I convinced myself and my wife that I could afford a $500 lathe to start making my first shaving brush. And I kind of just wanted to make one for myself and maybe a few out there for the community. And so I got that lathe, got tools, and I started. I turned my first one out of cocobolo wood. Have you ever heard of that type of wood? It's a really oily type of dark wood, very hard. Messed it up horribly, and then I was able to get some sort of a shape out of it, and then I sold that. I think it was May of 2013, I guess would be 10 years this coming May, and sold it to a guy named Jeff. And he and I still keep in touch every now and then as my first customer. And anyway, I started in my backyard because I had a very small house. I think it was 1,369 square feet, and it was in Newport News. I still live in Newport News, Virginia, but I did move a few years ago. I started turning those brushes under kind of low hanging branches of a maple tree, because I had no other place to put a lathe that, where I could make a mess. So I started turning them under that tree, and before it would rain, I would throw my I had an old Gore-Tex lined trench coat that had a couple of rips in it, and I used that as a kind of a rain shield instead of a tarp, for when it would rain. And but then I want to say it was late that fall of 2013 that I put up a kind of a yard shed in my backyard, ran an extension cord from the house, and that started turning out in the backyard. But at least I had some rain protection, whatnot. But that's what got me started, was just the intrigue and the creative flair that other artisans had put into their work, and that inspired me to want to do something like that as well.
Right. I mean, I guess little did you know that you'd end up so popular that, I've been on your wait list a few times, and it seems like you open up the wait list and that thing fills up in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, and I have a feeling the one in February is going to fill up fairly quickly, because I haven't had the wait list open since October, and that's actually a segue toward conversation that maybe you and I should have about what's happening with that wait list.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So it was almost 2 years ago that I took a full-time job. That job was fairly flexible with time that gave me a little more time, like 3-day and 4-day weekends and whatnot. But then it was January 24th of last year that I started a new job that was a full-time maintenance position, where I work over at our local military Army base, Fort Eustis, here in Virginia. And I started working there as a maintenance technician, doing maintenance on military housing. So that is very demanding position, and I do dedicate 100% to something when I dedicate to it with my work, and so it's kind of been taken up the whole week except for Saturday and Sundays. So that kind of set me a little bit back. A lot of times on Saturdays I'm just recuperating and trying to get my bearings, and get things done around the home, mow the lawn, clean up here and there, fix something that needs fixing, maybe even spend some time with the family if that works out. And so a lot of times it's just Sunday where I get a few hours in my shop. So it has considerably set my wait list, slowed it down. So, which is both frustrating for me and for those that are on that wait list. So right now I'm trying to shrink the wait list to maybe 15 names or so, and then I can add 10. Hopefully I want to get back to every month or every other month adding 10 again, because I've only been making roughly an average of 5 to 8 shaving brushes a month now,
Right.
versus what I was years ago. And it isn't a marketing scheme or anything like that. It's just time that I'm able to spend in my shop.
Right.
So
That makes sense. One of the things I like about your brushes is your unique ability to create very consistent shapes. Like I've got one right here. I don't have access to my full collection back in the States, but I do have one that I ordered from you recently, which is this one right here. This is, I believe, the Iliad shape. And your use of color and making it blend well seems to, I've never seen anybody else do it quite like you. So when you are coming up with like a color theme, uh, how does that usually work out? Do you just like stumble into it?
That's a great question, Benjamin. Sometimes I do stumble into it. Whether it be sometimes when you're pouring your leftover resin, you're put it, you don't want to throw it away, so you're pouring it into a mold somewhere, and things come together and say, "Hey, that looks really cool." You know, I wonder if I can duplicate that. So I'll duplicate it a couple times, see if it works out. Um, but also, believe it or not, this may seem obscure and quirky, but you could be walking through your local hardware store or Walmart, and you see a label somewhere on some product, and you're like, that's really cool how those colors come together. I wonder if I can take those two, three colors and put them together and make it kind of neat. Um, what I always look for when I'm casting anything with polyester resin, I look for contrast, something that makes the primary colors pop, and so if you do like a multiple color swirl, you don't want to go too heavy on multiple colors because it gets muddy. The exothermic reaction causes the colors to kind of do their own thing, and it can get muddy and just create nothing. So I try to minimize to 3 or 4 colors and maybe one color and less concentration that just adds a little contrast to make the other colors pop out, and so that it doesn't get crazy or doesn't get too busy, in but yeah, it's just whatever I see around in nature or in a store, man-made, this, that, or whatever. um, that's kind of where those color themes come from, and sometimes just by accident. Sometimes I'll have a leftover resin that I put into a mold, and you just get lucky, and you get a leftover one that turns out well.
So when you are creating these different color themes, you know, it can the inspiration can come from anywhere. What's your oldest color theme? For those of you who don't know, if you go to Wolf Whiskers' website, he actually has a list of basic color combinations that he knows he can pull off, and those are called his color themes. Which one has been around the longest?
Oh, I wasn't ready for that question. I don't know, but I think Poseidon's layer, that's been around for a while. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head for sure. I mean, that one's simple. Poseidon's layer is just black and blue. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, Benjamin. That's a really good question. I might have to get back to you on that.
I mean,
But I know Poseidon's layer, that's been around for a little while. Um, there's a few that I discontinued. I had one, Ginny's Joy, I called it, that it had I think 5 different colors in it, blue, orange, red, yellow, and black, and I think that's 5. And that one I had to discontinue just because it wasn't consistently turning out for me,
right.
and too many colors sometimes, and it just got brown and muddy, and it didn't turn out. But that one was around for a while. But a lot of the oldest color themes sort of got discontinued, not because I didn't want to make them. It's just because I couldn't be consistent.
They
And
were
if I
too hard to make.
Yeah, too difficult, or just not consistent. And if you're not consistent, you're wasting materials, bad for the environment, that kind of thing. Plus time, and frustration for me and customers. So it's sometimes you have to make those tough decisions. And I know it doesn't make everybody happy if they can't, get this color that they saw from 8 years ago, but sort of is what it is,
Right.
and
That's kind of the unfortunate reality of custom brush making is that a lot of times people don't know what they want, and so they'll go back and look at what you've done in the past. And if it was, a few too many years ago, you're probably finding yourself sitting there going, I don't remember how I did that.
that's part of
So,
it, Benjamin. And also, everybody adapts over time, and changes a little bit. Your vision changes. You could have a perfect recipe for something, but you if you're cooking a recipe, or for example, I mean, it's easy. You got 1 teaspoon of this, 1 tablespoon of that, and 2 cups of this, and you bake it at 350 degrees or whatever it is that you're making. With polyester resin, it's not that simple. If you put in too much of a hardener and too much color, the color will change and shift just a little bit. If and when you mix them, if you wait too long, or you have too much color, or whatever, the reaction could be different, because unlike making a cake, for example, there are so many variables with casting polyester resin, and there's other artisans that could tell you the same, that those variables, even temperature outside and humidity outside will factor in, and the temperature of the resin when you pour them together. So many factors that it can change the appearance from one time to the next time that you do it.
right. So even if you're doing everything in your power the same way you did it the last time, it still might not come out exactly the same.
Correct.
And, like when you're going from, one Poseidon's layer brush to the next, one might have more blue than the next one. That color blue might not be quite the same shade of blue.
Right.
And so when somebody looks at something you did like a year and a half ago and like, hey, can you make this? It's like, well, yes and no.
Right.
Not going to come out looking exactly the same.
Benjamin, if you hold your brush up again for the audience, I want it. Yours is a perfect example. If you look on the top rim of your shaving brush, you can see the white is more concentrated there. That's a perfect example of what we're talking about. And if you could, you could show.
Yeah, there's that like semi-translucent thing it's got going on.
Right. But you notice on the top of that, near the knot, it's more concentrated with white. In this case, I cast that top part first, and then do the semi-translucent layer second. But white is one of those colors, for example, that you have to add a lot of pigment to get it to become white.
Right.
You're going from clear to a white. And because of the extra pigment, you're creating a higher viscosity, more dense and heavier. So the white tends to drop to the bottom of the mold. That's a perfect example, because if you put too much white in something, for example, now you're changing the dynamic of everything, and most of it will go to the bottom of the mold.
Right.
And
so when you cast this brush, you cast it like this. It was effectively upside down when you cast it.
absolutely correct. And there's a couple reasons I do that. But the primary reason is, in this case, I can't put the first layer casting in a pressure pot, because I can't control the, where the bubbles come out of the, out of the liquid. I have to keep those from causing an air pocket or whatever between the two layers. So I can't put it in a pressure pot, but the second casting I can, and I don't want to have a bubble show,
Right.
with the translucent part.
So for those of you who you might not be able to see this very well, but this brush is actually a multi-layered brush. It's got I think this color theme that's up on the top is called Blue Train.
Yes.
But the bottom is this semi-translucent clear. with a little bit of blue and trying to get this to focus. Might not do it very well, but it's a little bit of blue and black kind of poured into the bottom of it. And some brush makers will have two different pours and just kind of compress them together, glue them together. This is one solid piece of resin. Am I right?
Yes, well, it's two different layers, but yeah, when the exothermic reaction from the second layer combines with the first layer, it is more solid than super glue. So
Right.
I trust it more than any kind of epoxy or super glue. It becomes solid.
Right. So it's practically impossible to tell with the naked eye that this is two different pours, basically.
Well, that's a nice compliment. But sometimes the layers are very, very distinct too, so
Right.
they are easier to see.
Right. But that's usually because it's dividing along a very contrasting color line, right? Like you designed it to be, I don't know very much about brush making, but let's just say you have a brush that's solid black on the bottom and solid red on the top. Well, the difference between the two pores is going to kind of cut along that line where you want the colors to split anyway, right?
Right. Yeah, that's the goal is always to line them up with the natural contours and shape of the brush um, itself. So yeah, that's a good example. Actually, I do have a solid black and a solid red one out there somewhere.
What's your favorite color combination that you've done? And you can't say I love them all. Can't do that.
No, I won't either because my favorite one I've made I think three of these. Um, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but um, it was kind of a red and white, and red and white are one of those difficult two colors to come together to get it right. But it was red and white, and then I think there was um, black on the bottom, and then a red bead up on top. It just to me that just popped. I'm not even a lover of the color red, but this one popped for some reason. And when I did my, I want to say my 4,000th brush, I used a blank that I had been saving that I had made a while ago. And it was the shape of, what did I call it? The Brazilian lobster tail, I think is what I called that
Yeah, I
shape.
think you sent me a picture of that.
Yeah, I might have.
We'll
Yeah,
put it up on the screen if that's the one I'm thinking of.
yeah.
But
I'll send it to you later if I didn't.
that was a crazy brush. I looked at that, I was like, whoa, who whoever gets their hands on that is gonna have a piece of history in their hands.
Yep, and someone did get their hands on it. Um, Now that handle turned out to be a little bit wider than some of my other shapes by its very nature. It sort of had to be, but you're not going to drop it and at the sink anywhere because it has those nice um, shape to it. You're just not going to drop it. But
Yeah.
I did like it. For some reason, I guess that color theme just pops to me. But probably my favorite color theme by itself is Earth's core. Um, I just love it. It's kind of got a kind of a rustic rust rust color, kind of a rustic red or I can't remember the exact color, and it's a bronze and just black. Those three colors when they come together, I am a very the color themes that appeal to me the most are earth tones rather than blues and reds typically. But I've always been a lover of the of earth tone colors um, since I was a child. So that one appeals to me. Maybe because I love coffee, and maybe the color coffee just appeals to me. So
Yeah, I've seen that. I've almost ordered that color theme a few times, but every time I end up on your list, I seem to end up going for something else. Which color theme sells the most? Which single color theme do you think people want the most of, you see the most often?
It goes in waves, but Poseidon's layer comes to mind. Um, Blue color themes. Blue is one of those colors that appeals, I think, to the majority of people. Um, I think there's been some scientific data to prove that, but for some reason, blue color themes tend to sell the most. Uh, I I don't know exactly which one. I've never really tallied those up, but Poseidon's layer is definitely up there. But
Yeah, when I look on your Facebook profile and see all the pictures of your work you put up there, I see a lot of Poseidon's layer, a lot of I actually see a lot of Bourbon Street,
yeah, Party on Bourbon Street.
part
Yeah,
of
that
Party on Bourbon Street. For some reason, I see a lot of that. That's a really kooky kind of combination of green and yellow and black, and
it's funny. I've never been to Louisiana ever, and I don't even know how Bourbon Street popped into my head. I guess I probably watched news and marching through the street, during Mardi Gras and those colors, the color beads. It just seemed like it, that wasn't a fitting name. Um, but yeah, it's a pretty one, but it is by no means one of the top sellers. But it's uh it's a good color theme. I like that one.
let's talk about your packaging for a minute because this is a lot of other brush makers whose names I won't mention. Their packaging is sometimes you get something good, sometimes you don't. Your stuff is has a lot of money put into it. Because you get this really nice box that's got this like confetti paper in it. And then you even go so far as to put a sticker inside the box that describes exactly what this brush is. And it says this one says number 2022-4066. So I'm guessing that's your 4066th brush.
That's correct.
It's a lot of
Yep.
brushes.
Yeah, it was a few. Um, yeah, it was an evolution over time. It was shortly after my first year that I started making my own. They call those set top boxes. I didn't know that until I started researching, and I started making my own. But boy, it took me just as long to make a box as it did to make a shaving brush. I use, I think 60 point chipboard and, the fancy paper you can get from Michael's or one of the, hobby stores. But these here I have made for me. I don't make the boxes. And I think it was my second year I was on deployment. And when you're on deployment on a ship, and you work with other people, what else do you talk about? You got to talk about something. So you're standing watch with your buddies, and something will come up, and hey, what about this? Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, have you thought about this? And then one day someone said packaging is important, and you're labeling yourself, and that's kind of when um, somebody already came up with the logo for me. I didn't create the logo. That was Terry Wills. Terry Wills. That created the logo for me. It evolved a little bit, but not too much from the original. And but the box, when I went to the company and they've already changed their name, the company sold to another company, and I told them what I wanted. I wanted this 60 point chipboard and this type of paper and this type of paper and I wanted the set top box to have a little gap on the bottom so you can see the cream, you can see the green, and you can pull them apart a lot easier. And at first they were trying to kind of corner me, into a different style. Um, and they said, no, 30 point chipboard will be enough. And I said, no, I really want 60. And here's why. I said, I want it to be, to protect the brush. I want it to be a keepsake as along with the brush. Um, and they finally went along with it, and they actually did like the result that they created and put it on display somewhere in their warehouse, and I sent them a shaving brush to, you know, just for fun. But yeah, I like that. And then it was, I want to say it was 8 years after I started, or 7 or something like that, when I started putting labels. Um, there was a time where I was handwriting a little note in there, for a short period of time. And I don't know. My handwriting isn't as good as the typewriter. So,
Right. Yeah, it's there's definitely some attention to detail that you don't get with just every brush. Some people don't care about packaging. Me personally, I could take it or leave it, but every brush that I've got from you, I still have the box just
yeah.
because it's a very good box. Uh, I actually still have the very first Evergreen Abyss brush that you made, because I remember I tried to corner you into making a one-off color that you made like years and years ago, and you legitimately could not remember how you did it, and but you figured it out and it turned out pretty good. And as far as I know, that's still a color combination that's available on your website, isn't it?
Uh, the Evergreen Abyss. Yes. Yes, it is. Um, it's not, I don't remember the discussion that we had, about the color you were looking for, but I did like how this turned out. And sometimes you can't always duplicate a color theme because some of the pigments change over time. Your suppliers, they come and go. A lot of the pigment come from soap making websites, and because it's compatible with polyester resin, like mica powders, and some aren't. So some just don't mix and mix very well, and they clump up. It just depends what you get. Um, so those companies come and go, and so that you can't always duplicate it something exactly. The formulas that they come up with change, and they might order the exact same product that they did 2 years prior, but for whatever reason their supplier changed it just a little bit. So now all of a sudden you're when I'm like three persons down the list, you know from the primary supplier to the secondary vendor to me, um something changes, and so you kind of have to adapt and hope you can get it as close as you can.
Right. And then you'll have customers who will rattle off something out of their drugged up imagination, and you'll be find yourself scratching your head like, I don't know what you've been smoking, but it's cute that you think I can make that. Not everything that people think up in their head can be reduced to a physical medium. And I know you've told me that you've had some requests where it's just like, I have no idea how I would even do that, how I would pull that off.
Yeah, and I some of that comes from experience, but also some of that comes from mistakes, trial and error, that I have tried things that I really wanted to make. Um, for example, some people are really good at embedding different objects in polyester resin. I had some luck initially, and then I had some just destroyed heirloom things that people sent me and asked me to cast in a clear resin, and the exothermic reactions that it gets almost 200, sometimes higher degrees, when it's going through that reaction, and it discolors it or destroys whatever it was on the inside. and
Right.
and so I kind of had to step away from some things. That's actually a good example. But um, the song, or the music group Imagine Dragons, that comes to mind when you were talking. I think it's because sometimes we can imagine things in our head, and we see things maybe that, hey, somebody else was able to create something like that. Well, everybody has a different skill set that they bring to the table. And which is why I always encourage people, if you see another artisan that creates something that you want, ask that artisan, because they can probably maybe recreate it. I'm definitely not going to try to um, create something that I know I haven't had luck with. And um, but yeah, that brings up a good point. And I actually put that disclaimer on my emails that I send out because we do have, all of my customers have very creative imaginations. So much so that I think they call it indecision paralysis or something like that. Um,
Yep.
you think of so many things are running through your head. And I understand that. I really do. That because I have this, so I can relate to my customers who also have this indecision paralysis. I can, you can go through the toothpaste aisle, for example, and you're like, I don't even know what I'm going to buy. And then you'll leave because I don't know what to buy, or hand lotion or something.
Yeah,
I'm
I
not going
wasn't
to,
mentally prepared for this.
yeah, I'm not going to spend $7 for, when there's 40 different ones here and that one might not do anything. That's $7 wasted. So yeah, I have that. I understand it when my customers go through that process and they're trying to come up with something, because it's a difficult decision to spend money on anything that you may or may not even like in the end. So um and then you might like something one day and the next morning you wake up, I really completely want to change gears and do something else. So I understand that, and I can relate to people. And I know some of my customers think that they're being a pain in the what, but they're not, because that is just the way the human brain works for some people. Is you have difficulty making decisions, and that's okay. We all, many of us have that. I have that. And so I can relate to that. And I
Yeah.
don't consider that as a pain in the butt. I consider that as part of the human process and the human thinking.
Yeah, there are no dumb questions.
Well, there are, but
But
not.
when
I don't see it as a dumb question when someone has a question about something, because they legitimately don't know the process. They don't know the exotricin. I can't even pronounce the word.
they don't know what you're capable of.
Yeah, or what I'm not capable of, and what you can and can't do with certain type of medium.
Right. Well, Peter, how about this? We talked about it offline. And for those viewers who are still watching, who had the courtesy to stick around, why don't we give away a brush? What do you think?
I would love to do that. That'd be great, Benjamin.
So we talked about it, and Peter has agreed to give away a brush that I will put it on the screen. We don't know what it's going to look like yet at the time this is being filmed, because it hasn't been made yet, but it is going to look exactly like this.
I don't know what it looks like yet
Yeah.
until now.
So we'll put a screenshot in there in post production. So for those of you who stuck around for the whole video, all you have to do is put in the comment section of the video Wolf Whiskers, exactly the way you see it across the bottom of your screen. And in a subsequent video, I will do a random comment picker, and we will pick a random winner, and I will announce it on the video, and we'll give away a brush. Since I wholeheartedly believe in this brush maker, I think I have more of your products than any other single brush maker at this point. And it's really inspiring to see you still hanging around doing this as often as you can.
Thank you, Benjamin.
So let's segue into the elevator speech. Now, you kind of have an unfair advantage because I warned you. If I got in an elevator with you, didn't know who you were, didn't know a thing about you, how would you sell your products in 30 seconds?
Um, I consider myself an artisan. I make things at home. That's how I always start my conversations. I don't know if you're familiar with shaving brushes, but it's kind of an old hobby, but it's evolved into something kind of more modern. And I take materials that I can purchase and create and turn shaving brushes and sell them to around the world. um, Really, that's all I ever tell people. um, I'm actually blushing because I don't really have an elevator speech. So, but that's the best I can do.
No, you usually kind of just stumble into the conversation and people find themselves on board with it fairly easily.
I usually ask them the question, are you familiar with wet shaving, kind of with the old style wet shaving with the shaving brush and a razor? And
Are
then
you familiar with Kirby vacuums?
exactly. Yeah, those are solid. And
Yeah,
and I
they
said,
are, but my God, those
modern
Kirby salesmen.
and I
Uh,
said modern flair on kind of an old hobby, an old style of shaving.
I did that to a friend of mine I was friends with back when I at Scott Air Force Base, the last place I was stationed. Uh, April Fool's Day, I sicked the Kirby salesman on him. Dude was mad.
Wow, those are
Uh,
great vacuums.
so I'm never gonna live that one down. But Peter, it's been a pleasure having you on here to talk about your products. You don't get this opportunity often, I'm guessing. So I'm glad to have you on here to really foot stomp this passion you've had for so long. Let's do the frag out before we get out of here. What did you bring?
Oh, I brought Katie's Bubbles. It's called Lancaster Leather. It was a limited edition um, product that Chris created for a meetup that did not occur. So he sent them out to all of his all the customers that purchased these. We were supposed to meet up in Pennsylvania for some meetup for East Coast Shaving, I think it was. Apologize if I forget the group that initiated that.
Right. And then
And
the bug hit.
it's a very, very strong fragrance, very concentrated, in my opinion. Um, I've had this, I think, 2 years, and you can hardly tell that it's been
Right.
used. Just a fine mist is all you need with this
And
stuff. It's really
it's a leathery fragrance, obviously. Is it kind of a Russian dirty leather? Or is it a little more on the new car smell kind of side of things?
describing fragrances is not my strength. I admit. In fact, I have a hard time really smelling leather, but I, I just I'm not. It's not my strength describing fragrances.
That's
So I
fine.
apologize for that. But it's hard to describe. Um, it's I do love leather, and I have lots of leather boots. I wouldn't say this smells like leather, but it's reminiscent of leather.
Right.
Maybe a correlation between a memory and leather, something that was made with leather, if
Hey,
that makes sense.
scent memories are valuable things. I didn't bring anything too crazy, just the Blue de Chanel, which is a woody, ambergris, grapefruity sort of thing. So let's spray this stuff on, and then we can go about our day. Well, Peter, it's uh, it's been it's really been great having you around in the wet shaving community because I guarantee you've influenced a lot of other brush makers who got inspiration from you. One last question I have before we get out of here is what was the biggest challenge throughout this whole 10-year journey of making shave brushes?
Um, well, there's been a lot. The biggest one is probably that those initial first couple of years to just figure out how to do it because I didn't have any formal lessons at all, and there weren't really any at the time when I started. There weren't any videos on how to turn something like that. I had to watch pen making videos on how to make pens, but that's a different technique. because you have a mandrel, and you have bushings and that sort of thing too. But this was a little bit different. That was one of my biggest challenges is figuring how to do that. But maybe one of the other challenges was I wasn't ready for growth at all. I didn't see myself as selling more than maybe a dozen shaving brushes, and that was my hope, is just to offset some of the cost for my first lathe and materials. It wasn't something that I really sought to having a wait list. I did not foresee that at all. And in fact, the first several months, you just hope that somebody might want to buy a shaving brush that's made by a small time no name artisan. And
right. Well, I mean, every time I've ever seen a video of somebody making a brush, it does not look easy. So the fact that you were somehow able to be so talented at it and gather such an incredible following, that's really is impressive stuff. People are paying attention, and these Wolf Whiskers brushes are there's nothing else like them. There really isn't.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good artisans out there, and I'm not standing alone. I'm standing on the backs of giants too. There are a couple of great artisans that I recall seeing. They had some of the best looking stuff I've seen, and there were some that I didn't know who they were, but I saw their products and I said, that is really cool, especially some of the wood shaving brushes early on when I was looking at those. And but I guess one of the biggest challenges that I had was jumping into the idea of casting polyester resin. That was something that I don't know if anyone else was doing at the time with shaving brushes anyway. I know they were for pens, but jumping into that, and creating your own supplies, basically, that was both good and it was challenging, because now you're learning a new artistry or new chemistry, something you've never done before, so that you have your own raw materials. Well, I wouldn't call them raw materials, but your own materials to turn. And that was definitely a huge challenge, and it still is. And there's things that every artisan will tell you with brushes anyway, that still occur every time. They still mess up casting, if they do casting. They still mess up turning every now and then. They have a blowout on their lathe, and there goes your shaving brush. You hit it just incorrectly with the tool for half a second, it's done just like that, and you got to start all over. So every artisan will tell you that those are challenges that are ongoing, that you never get rid of. Human error, just it occurs.
Well, you're right. Human error does occur. Well, Peter, I want to sincerely thank you for taking time out of your day to come on the project and talk about your products. I hope everybody enjoyed the video. I will announce the giveaway winner exactly 7 days from the day this gets posted. I want to thank everybody for watching, and until next time, this is Soap Thing telling you, shave like you mean it. Thanks for watching.